Hello and welcome. For more than 2 decades, the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter program has been presented as the cornerstone of future tactical air power for the United States and its key allies. It is, without question, the most expensive and most technologically ambitious weapons system in human history. But with that immense ambition and unprecedented cost come equally immense challenges. The Government Accountability Office, the GAO, serves as the independent, nonpartisan investigative watchdog for the United States Congress. Its mandate is to audit and investigate how taxpayer dollars are spent. Periodically, the GAO releases comprehensive reports on major government programs, and its latest report on the F-35 program, released in 2024, provides a stark, data-driven, and neutral examination of the program's current state. Today, our purpose is not to engage in speculation, opinion, or hyperbole. Our purpose is to conduct a neutral, detailed dive into the official findings of this public report. The figures, timelines, and conclusions we will discuss are not our own. They come directly from the GAO and the Department of Defense. For an adult audience, for the taxpayers who fund this endeavor, and for all those interested in the realities of national defense procurement, these facts are critical to understand and to place in their proper context. This single program is now estimated to cost over $2 trillion over its planned 77-year life cycle. Our objective today is to clinically examine the facts as presented by the government's own auditors and to understand the profound challenges this program faces in delivering its promised capability for that staggering cost. To understand the problems of today, we must first briefly look back at the promise of yesterday. The Joint Strike Fighter program contract was officially awarded to Lockheed Martin back in October of 2001. The core concept was, on its face, a revolutionary approach to procurement. The goal was to design and build a single fifth-generation stealth airframe that could be adapted to meet the distinct needs of three separate U.S. military services, the F-35A for the Air Force, the F-35B short takeoff and vertical landing, or STOVL, variant for the Marine Corps, and the F-35C carrier-capable variant for the Navy. This joint concept was promoted as a way to fundamentally save costs, theoretically streamlining development, logistics, and parts supplies across the entire fleet. However, the 2024 GAO report reminds us that this very ambition, the requirement to satisfy three different masters with one design, led to a cascade of delivery delays and severe cost overruns from the program's earliest days. These early hurdles were significant indicators of the immense technical difficulty that lay ahead. A prime example cited in the report is the helmet-mounted display system. This is not an optional piece of equipment. It is fundamentally central to how the pilot flies and fights the aircraft. This system, costing approximately $400,000 per helmet, replaces the traditional heads-up display, or HUD. It projects all vital flight, navigation, and targeting information directly onto the pilot's visor. It is also the display for the distributed aperture system, a network of external cameras that allows the pilot to, in effect, see through the floor and fuselage of the airframe, providing unparalleled situational awareness. This foundational piece of technology, so critical to the F-35's design, was plagued by technical problems. The report notes that it took 5 years of intensive testing and development just to correct a symbology jittering problem in the pilot's visor. A 5-year delay on a single core component was a profound early sign of the program's underlying complexity. This was not an isolated incident. The report data points to other fundamental hardware and airframe issues that emerged during initial testing. The F-35B, the complex Marine Corps STOVL version, was found to have premature fatigue cracks in its fuselage, a critical structural failure that required a significant and time-consuming fuselage redesign. The F-35C, the Navy's carrier-based version, encountered a remarkable failure with a piece of technology that has been a staple of naval aviation since 1941, the tailhook. The initial design of the hook simply failed to reliably catch the arresting wire on the carrier deck. This fundamental failure forced a complete redesign of the tailhook assembly, a process that took 2 years to correct. Furthermore, on both the F-35B and F-35C models, test pilots discovered that normal use of the engine's afterburner was causing significant heat damage to the horizontal tails and aft fuselage. This, again, required another redesign, another retrofit, and more delays, adding to the program's already mounting costs. Even the engine, the Pratt & Whitney F-135, which itself was a derivative of the highly successful F-119 engine used by the F-22 Raptor, was not immune. The report identified early development problems with its low observable augmenter, a component critical to the aircraft's stealth design. This defect was found to cause pressure pulses at certain low altitudes and high airspeeds, another critical flaw that required yet another redesign, putting the entire program even further behind schedule. These early hardware problems are not just historical footnotes. They are the essential context for the program's performance, as they led to a cascade of delays that have had lasting repercussions. The first U.S. Marine Corps F-35B was not able to reach deployable squadrons until July of 2015. The U.S. Air Force F-35A followed in August of 2016. And the U.S. Navy F-35C, the carrier variant, was not considered operational until February of 2019. This means that from the initial contract award in late 2001, it took between 14 and 18 years for the first operational aircraft to actually reach the warfighter. This incredibly long and troubled development cycle serves as the direct precursor to the critical modernization challenges that the program faces today, which are the central focus of the 2024 GAO report. The absolute core of the GAO's new report centers on the F-35's critical modernization effort, a program known as Block 4. Block 4 is not a new airplane. It is a massive, concurrent hardware and software modification effort. Its entire purpose is to upgrade the F-35 fleet to counter emerging and future threats, particularly those identified as pacing threats from nations like China. Block 4 is designed to add a host of new capabilities, including the ability to carry new weapons systems, integrate advanced radar enhancements, and improve its electronic warfare suite. This is, in effect, the upgrade that is intended to finally make the F-35 the dominant, future-proof fighter it was always promised to be. The findings of the GAO on this specific effort are stark. The report states that the Block 4 modernization, originally planned as a 7-year program, is now 5 years behind schedule and $6 billion over budget. This means a 7-year program has, at a minimum, become a 12-year program, with costs spiraling. The primary bottleneck for this $6 billion overrun and 5-year delay is a new suite of hardware and software known as Technology Refresh 3, or TR3. It is essential to understand what TR3 is. If Block 4 is the new capability, TR3 is the new brain and central nervous system required to run it. It provides the improved systems processing capability, the increased memory capacity, and the new core architecture needed to operate the Block 4 software. The problem is simple and severe. Without a stable, functional, and delivered TR-3, the entire Block 4 modernization effort cannot be fielded. The F-35 simply cannot run the new upgrades, and the GAO report identifies multiple, severe, and compounding issues with the development of TR-3. First, the report cites supply chain and quality issues. It points to what it calls design immaturity of the mission computer's integrated core processor. This immaturity led to the supplier delivering fewer of these critical processors and delivering them later than planned. Furthermore, the report states that those processors which were managed to be delivered had significant, unresolved quality issues. Second, the report identifies delays in other key hardware components, such as the Next-Generation Distributed Aperture System, or DAS. This is the system of 360-degree infrared cameras that allows the pilot to see through the airframe. It, too, has suffered design delays, holding back the TR-3 package. Third, and perhaps most critically, the report states that the software that actually runs the TR-3 hardware has had significant and persistent stability issues. These are not minor bugs. The report links these stability issues directly to the functioning of the F-35's radar and its cockpit displays, two of the most critical systems on any fighter aircraft. The failure to deliver a stable, working, and producible TR-3 has not just delayed the Block 4 upgrade, it has created a massive, cascading ripple effect that has now impacted the entire F-35 production line and is degrading the military's operational readiness. The first major consequence of the TR-3 failure is a logistical and financial nightmare. Because the new, upgraded TR-3 hardware and software were not working, Lockheed Martin could not deliver finished, combat-ready aircraft to the Department of Defense. This created a massive backlog. By mid-2024, the report notes that this created a situation with potentially over 100 brand-new F-35 aircraft parked, unable to be delivered, on the tarmac at contractor facilities. This, in itself, presents a significant risk, having over 100 of these high-value, zillion-dollar assets concentrated in one location. To mitigate this risk and to get aircraft off the contractor's lot, the F-35 Program Executive Office, or PEO, made a difficult decision in July of 2024. They decided to provisionally accept these new, incomplete aircraft. These aircraft are being delivered in what the report officially categorizes as a non-combat capable status. This means these brand new F-35s are being sent to various air bases, but they are explicitly designated for training purposes only. They cannot be used in a real-world combat scenario. The plan is for Lockheed Martin to continue developing software upgrades to, at some point in the future, add combat capability back into this parked fleet. The financial implications of this are significant. Under the contract, Lockheed Martin was fined $5 million for each non-combat-capable airplane it delivered. However, the GAO report notes two crucial pieces of context for that fine. First, $5 million represents only about 3% of the flyaway unit cost of a single F-35. Second, and more importantly, the report states that this fine will be refunded to the contractor once the full Block 4 upgrades are finally installed in those airplanes. Under the current, heavily delayed plan, this refund is not projected to happen until at least 2026. The report presents this as a stopgap measure, but the practical reality is that the military is currently accepting, and the taxpayer is paying for, brand new aircraft that are not ready for their intended mission. The second major consequence of the F-35's delays is that they are not happening in a vacuum. The entire force structure of the Air Force, Navy, and Marine Corps is built on a complex, interlocking timeline that assumed F-35s would be ready to replace aging fourth-generation fighters. When these F-35s are late or delivered in a non-combat capable status, the services are forced to make extremely costly adjustments to plug the gap. The GAO report provides concrete, expensive examples of this ripple effect. As far back as 2015, the U.S. Navy was forced to tell Congress that it was not getting its new F-35Cs in time to replace its aging FA-18EF Super Hornet squadrons. To prevent a critical fighter shortfall in the fleet, Congress eventually had to approve $1.3 billion for 17 additional Super Hornets. These were aircraft that were never in the original budget. That is $1.3 billion in unplanned spending on fourth-generation planes, spent only because the fifth-generation replacement was not ready. Similarly, the Marine Corps has been forced to keep its AV-8B Harrier squadrons operational far past their planned decommissioning date. This means flying and maintaining decades-old aircraft because their F-35B replacements have been chronically late. And the Air Force is now having to rethink its entire plan for how it preserves its own fourth-generation inventory, stretching the life of F-16s and F-15s to cover the shortfalls left by the F-35A. These cascading delays create a domino effect across the entire Department of Defense, forcing the Pentagon to spend billions of unplanned dollars to maintain, operate, and extend the life of older, less capable aircraft, simply to have enough operational fighters on the flight line to meet global commitments. Perhaps the most significant and costly long-term finding in the 2024 GAO report is the discovery of a fundamental design flaw, a mismatch between the aircraft and its upgrades. The report finds that the new Block 4 modernization upgrades, which are already $6 billion over budget, require more power and more cooling than the aircraft's original design was ever intended to provide. The new processors, sensors, and electronic warfare systems are incredibly power-hungry and generate an immense amount of heat. This means the jet's single F-135 engine has to work significantly harder than it was designed to, not just for propulsion, but to act as a power plant and a cooling system for the new electronics. The consequence of this, as identified by the report, is stark. This added, unceasing strain is reducing the overall life expectancy of the engine. A shorter engine life means engines must be repaired, overhauled, or replaced much more frequently than planned. This single issue, the power and cooling deficit, has added, according to the report's new cost estimate, a staggering $38 billion to the F-35 program's total life cycle sustainment cost. This is a new $38 billion liability for taxpayers, created solely by the failure to properly engineer the upgrades. To fix this fundamental mismatch, the F-35 Program Office has been forced to award Pratt & Whitney, the engine manufacturer, a new, separate contract for $1.3 billion. This contract is to develop improvements to the F-135 engine core and its power thermal management unit, just to be able to handle the new upgrades. This is a classic example of a cascading design failure. The program is now running a separate $1.3 billion development program to upgrade the engine, simply to handle the $6 billion over-budget electronic upgrades for the airframe, which in turn has already created a new $38 billion long-term sustainment liability. This brings us to the central question of accountability, which is a major focus of the 2024 GAO report. The report analyzes why these delays and cost overruns continue to happen, and its findings point directly to flawed contract structures and a lack of effective incentives. First, the report establishes that the delivery problem is not only happening, but it is actively getting worse. The data shows that the engine manufacturer, Pratt & Whitney, has been suffering its own severe supply chain issues, which has caused the company to deliver the current design engines to Lockheed Martin late. As one graphic in the report starkly shows, this engine delay problem has only gotten worse since 2019. These engine delays, combined with all the other TR3 and supply chain issues, have led to what the report calls exponential increases in the percentage of F-35s that Lockheed Martin has delivered late to the Pentagon. The data provided in the report is unambiguous and merits a close look. In the year 2021, the average delay for an F-35 delivery was 16 days. By 2024, 100% of all F-35s were delivered late, and the average length of that delay had ballooned from 16 days to 238 days. This catastrophic collapse in on-time performance brings us to the core of the accountability issue. How do the defense companies get paid? The GAO report flags this as a significant part of the problem. The contract structure, as explained by the report, is based on three main parts: a base profit, a negotiated percentage of the cost, incentive fees paid on top of the profit, intended to incentivize good performance like reducing costs or delivering on time, and penalties, intended to punish contractors for poor performance. The GAO's findings on how this structure has been applied are alarming. Let's first examine the Lockheed Martin airframe contract. The report states that the F-35 program office compensated Lockheed Martin with hundreds of millions of dollars in performance incentive fees during the exact same period that the percentage of late aircraft and the average days of delay were growing exponentially. How is this possible? The report explains. The contract did include performance incentive fees for on-time delivery. However, the contract's rules allowed Lockheed Martin to earn a portion of those fees for any aircraft delivered up to 60 days late. But as the delays stretched past 60 days to an average of 238 days, the problem became worse. The report finds that once program officials knew that Lockheed Martin would not be able to earn even those incentives, mostly due to the TR3 problems, they did not withhold the fees and save the taxpayer millions of dollars. Instead, the report states, the program office rewrote the contract and repurposed the incentive fees to other unrelated parts of the manufacturing process. This maneuver allowed the company to earn incentive fees that it was not eligible for under the previous contract, effectively negating the penalty for the massive delivery failures. A similar pattern was found in the Pratt & Whitney engine contract. The report finds that the engine manufacturer also earned tens of millions of dollars in incentive fees, while also being partially penalized for delivering engines increasingly late. The report details this specific incentive structure. Pratt & Whitney lost $10 million in penalties for consistently missing its delivery deadlines. However, the same incentive structure allowed the company to earn substantial fees for other metrics, such as keeping assembly time down. The report's analysis found that Pratt & Whitney earned more than 10 times that penalty amount, i.e., over $100 million, in these other incentive fees. The bottom line, as stated by the GAO, is that the value of the fees earned for assembly time more than offset the penalties for delivering the engines late. The GAO's conclusion on this matter is direct and unambiguous. The JSF program's incentive structure and late delivery penalty that was not effective at improving on-time deliveries. The data shows a contractual system where minor penalties for non-performance are dwarfed by massive incentive payments for other metrics. creating a financial environment where contractors can be, and are, financially rewarded even as the program's most critical goals, like on-time delivery, are failing completely. So, where does this leave the F-35 program today, according to the government's own auditors? In response to these catastrophic delays and technical failures with TR-3 and the engine, the F-35 Block 4 upgrade program is now being significantly scaled back. The original plan, which had grown from 53 new capabilities to 66, is being officially restructured. The report states the program is being broken into sub-programs with reduced scope in order to eliminate the engine and cooling upgrade dependency. The new plan, according to the report, is to now deliver this reduced set of capabilities by the year 2031. To summarize this finding, the F-35's critical modernization upgrade, which is already 5 years late and $6 billion over budget, is now being scaled back. The less capable version that results from this restructuring is now not expected to be operational for another 6 years. This brings us to the final, staggering cost estimates provided by the Department of Defense and cited in the report. The total acquisition costs, the cost just to research, develop, and buy the fleet of aircraft, have increased to $485 billion. This represents an increase of $43 billion from the previous official estimate in December of 2022. Separately, the Program Office now estimates that the cost to operate and sustain this F-35 fleet through its planned 77-year life cycle will be $1.58 trillion. When you combine the acquisition cost with the sustainment cost, the F-35 program's total acquisition and sustainment cost is now projected to be over $2.065 trillion. That is trillion with a T. The GAO's formal conclusions, presented in the neutral language of an official audit, are deeply concerning. I will quote directly from the report's summary. The F-35 remains critical to our national defense. However, after nearly 20 years of aircraft production, the F-35 program continues to overpromise and underdeliver. The report continues. In addition, the F-35's contractors continue to have challenges with fully meeting contract requirements, and the program rewards them for it. On the production failures, the GAO states, supply chain challenges continue to strain engine and aircraft production schedules, leading to increasingly late deliveries. The program, however, has not accounted for these delays as it continues to direct the contractors to increase production rates. And finally, on the issue of taxpayer value, the GAO concludes, it's increasingly important that DoD obtains real value for providing increased fees to contractors above and beyond the profits already built into the contracts. Better aligning incentive fee structure and payments with key goals of the program could help ensure these higher payments lead to improved outcomes for the taxpayer and the warfighter. After 24 years of development and production, and with a $2 trillion commitment from the American taxpayer, this is the official assessment. The F-35 program is, by all accounts, too critical to fail. But the 2024 GAO report presents a clear, data-driven, and unambiguous picture of a program struggling with fundamental and cascading challenges in cost, schedule, and technical performance. The data shows that the core of the problem lies not just in complex engineering, but in a management and contractual system that is currently failing to hold contractors accountable for the program's primary goals. This is the factual landscape as presented by the Government Accountability Office. We encourage a fact-based discussion of this data. Thank you for watching.